I am, as you now know, Rita Hoffmann, and I'm a freelance teacher of English as a foreign language, and I taught English for specific purposes. And now I'm going to tell you about the 8 years I spent as a teacher of English for specific purposes. And first of all, I would like to congratulate on choosing such a unique and oftentimes neglected topic as inclusive universities. Could I get the second slide? Yeah, thank you. Educators, special educators, advocacy groups, including those of disabled people, and parents frequently initiate various conversations on various platforms about inclusion, though, as I see, the questions what inclusion really means and how to be inclusive in most cases remain invisible particles of a rich collection of principles and theories. Practically, inclusion remains a utopia. Could I get the next slide, please? Still, what I would like to tell you is one possible way to turn these practices and theories, or utopia, into real practice. That certain way is relatively complex, though, as it involves the following components: the diverse nature of being human, accepting disability as an attribute of that diversity, and understanding disability through its cultural context. That multifaceted, complex way consists of several subcomponents, including critical approaches to cultural representations of disability and disability narratives, criticizing and rethinking disability-related stereotypical images, and last but not least, learning from disability narratives, learning from disabled persons themselves. So, when I was invited to teach English for specific purposes at Bárci Gusztáv Faculty of Special Education at Eötvös Lóránd University 8 years ago, I decided to include these subcomponents into language teaching in general and academic English in particular. Could I get the next, please? And I am now telling you the whys, the whats, and the hows. What I did, why I did what I did, and how I did the introduction of disability narratives and disabled persons' voices into teaching English for specific purposes. Let's start with the whys. English for specific purposes is a 0 credit course at the faculty. Therefore, students can hardly ever be motivated to actually learn English, despite all the advantages of that beautiful language and culture. Consequently, what I could do is to discover what motivates students, that is the whys, and ask them why they want to be special needs teachers. Obviously, each and every student I met during the 8 years immediately replied that they want to help disabled persons in general, and most of them disabled children in particular. Could I get the next slide, please? At that stage, I suppose students know very little about what a sensitive issue assistance or helping disabled people is. But without talking to them directly about the fragile nature of the topic, I lead them along a path within their own concepts and beliefs of disability and disabled persons. We, hand in hand, walk from misleading metaphors through stigmatizing stereotypes to disabled scholars' works. Could I just get the next slide? Thank you. I have 4 semesters for this walk to keep students motivated, to help students realize the sensitivity of assistance, recognize and understand the dangers of ableism, get acquainted with and challenge the politically correct languages in both English and Hungarian, learn the tricks and specialties of academic English as opposed to spoken English. But first of all, I have to teach students to listen to and trust in disabled scholars, disabled people, and learn from them as much as possible. Just the next slide, please. And now we have reached the what's. We always start the first semester with discussing disability representations. We look for metaphors in relatively simple texts and examine whether these metaphors exist in both the source and the target languages. And also, we discuss their messages, which prove extremely thought-provoking. Metaphors inspire us to go further into disability representations and investigate the paradigms, constructs, or models of disability. We talk about moral, medical, social, legal, and of course, the cultural models, and as they appear in culture. Could I get the next slide, please? These points remain in focus during the 4 semesters anyway, though from different aspects and contexts. In the second semester, students get acquainted with disability memoir and life writing. These works allow us to pay attention to some new aspects, such as the vulnerability of parents and siblings, and accessibility. The next slide, please. The 3rd and 4th semesters are dedicated to disabled scholars' works. So we reached academic writing style. Their essays, research papers reflect critically on various topics such as education, cultural event, accessibility, and at the same time, they highlight the multidisciplinary nature of critical disability studies and also cultural disability studies. Students can observe the different writing styles and get acquainted with academic writing, academic discourses. And the next slide, please. What materials did students meet on the way? I think it is important to start with something that is close to them. For example, current texts. So we work on blog posts, short stories, and movies. Then go back in time to see how paradigms have been changing, and we are coming back to the present, moreover, heading for the future. Next slide, please. Now they have arrived at the house. As students' knowledge of English is very different. I find it important that students inclusively support one another. Therefore, individual, pair, and group work are applied when translating or analyzing or criticizing the material. Could I just get the next slide, please? The results can best be measured from students' feedbacks. So let me just give you or read out some of them. Quote, I am glad that I could get to know disabled people from some new perspectives, unquote. The next quote, it was eye-opening to see and learn that there are so many ways of living in the world, unquote. Quote, I understood that to help people is more difficult than I have ever thought. It was an eye-opening, thought-provoking course, unquote. Now, quote, first, I did not know what to expect or how to say what I think, but as I was encouraged, I learned to be brave and critical, unquote. And quote, I managed to discover my own values and I learned to like them, unquote. Disabled people, disability-related narratives are extremely rewarding resources. Learning from them goes beyond special education. They have their own places in language teaching at any level, including academic English. So let them in to make the world more inclusive. Thank you for your kind attention.